You've probably seen the images already. Pretty dramatic stuff. Twisted metal, concrete, where vital infrastructure should be standing.
Yeah, over the past, 24 hours or so, some really significant events, and sadly deadly ones, have happened in those Russian regions right up against the Ukrainian border.
We're talking bridge collapses, train derailments. It's a lot to process.
It really is. And the information, well, it's complex. Some of it even seems contradictory as it comes out. We've gathered quite a stack of recent news reports, some briefing docs covering these specific incidents.
Okay, so that's our source material for this deep dive. And our mission really is to walk you through it. We want to unpack the facts as we know them, look at the different stories about why this happened, and just understand the wider context.
Right. The goal is to help you get up to speed quickly and clearly, especially when, getting the full picture is proving pretty tricky.
Okay, let's dive into that stack then. Where do we start? The Bryansk incident seems like the biggest one.
Definitely the most impactful, sadly. Okay, so Bryansk region. This happened late Saturday evening, May 31st. The timestamp is around 10:44 p.m. local.
And it was a road bridge near a town called Vygonichi. It just gave way.
Exactly. And the timing, just horrific. It collapsed right onto the railway tracks below, just as a passenger train was coming.
Oh no, which train was it?
The Klimovo to Moscow service, packed train, 388 passengers on board. And reports also say there was a semi-truck actually on the bridge when it went down.
So the train must have hit the debris immediately.
Almost instantly, yeah. The locomotive and 4 carriages derailed. The impact was, well, you can imagine, severe.
And casualties. I saw reports. It sounded bad.
Tragically, yes.
Yeah.
The latest we have is at least 7 people killed. That includes the train driver. And reports say at least 69 injured.
69 injured.
Yeah, and 47 of those needed hospitalization. 3 were listed in serious condition, including a child. The truck driver also injured. It's just a devastating human toll from this.
Absolutely awful. What happened right after? What did the authorities do?
Well, standard procedure, temporary shelters were set up. Passengers were eventually transported onto Moscow. Russian railways quickly announced compensation, about 2.2 million rubles, which is maybe $28,500 for the families of those killed.
And I saw Bryansk declared 3 days of mourning.
They did, and the footage from the scene, it's really stark. You see the mangled train cars, the huge chunks of fallen concrete.
Yeah, I saw some of that. And some reports mentioned vehicles that just managed to stop in time, braking right before driving onto the collapse section.
Incredible luck for them. But what's really interesting, or maybe telling, is how fast the theories about the cause started flying around.
Mm-hmm. Like what?
Well, some of those Telegram channels, the ones that are often very fast, sometimes unverified, Buzza, MASH, 112, Shot. They were reporting early on, and they immediately started suggesting an explosion.
An explosion? Targeting what?
Either the bridge supports or maybe explosives placed right on the tracks underneath. That was the initial chatter.
And didn't some pro-Kremlin sources jump on that too?
Yeah, the so-called war correspondents cited by some of these channels, they were alleging Ukrainian saboteurs had been active in the area beforehand.
Right. And then the governor, Bogomaz, he seemed quite certain.
He did. Alexander Bogomaz, the Bryansk governor, went on TV and stated quite plainly, this is a quote, "The bridge was blown up while the Klimovo-Moscow train carrying 388 passengers was in motion." Very specific claim.
Blown up. Okay, that's strong language right out of the gate from an official.
Exactly. And Moscow Railway's first statement kind of hinted at that too. Their initial Telegram post mentioned, and this phrase is specific, unlawful interference with transport operations.
Unlawful interference. That sounds like official code for sabotage, right? Not just an accident.
It often implies that, yes, deliberate criminal act. But here's where it gets really curious.
Right.
Moscow Railway later edited that post. They took out the phrase unlawful interference.
They removed it.
Yeah. We don't know for sure. But removing language that points to deliberate action after putting it out there, well, that's a significant edit. It suggests maybe the narrative was shifting or wasn't as certain as initially presented.
Okay, so while Bryansk is unfolding, with this confusion over the cause, something else happens.
Yes, just hours later, early Sunday morning, June 1st, this time further south in the Kursk region, another bridge collapse.
Another one. Was this road or rail?
A railway bridge this time, in the Zheleznogorsky district.
And what happened there?
It gave way as a freight train was crossing it. Part of the train actually fell onto the road underneath the bridge.
Okay. Any injuries in that one?
The locomotive apparently caught fire, but reports say it was put out quickly. The train crew, the engineers, they were hospitalized with injuries. One had a leg injury, apparently. But thankfully, no civilian casualties reported on the ground below.
And I assume traffic under the bridge is blocked now.
Yes, completely blocked.
And the cause there. Any immediate theories, like in Bryansk?
Well, again, unofficial reports, mainly those same telegram channels, shot, Baza. They claimed this bridge might also have been targeted. They mentioned maybe a homemade bomb planted in the structure.
So, wow. 2 major bridge collapses involving trains, both in border regions within hours of each other, and lots of early talk about explosions or sabotage.
Exactly, which immediately makes you wonder, what's the official line going to be from, the top investigators in Moscow?
Right. What did the main investigative body say? The investigative committee.
Okay, so initially, Russia's investigative committee, they handled the big, often sensitive criminal cases. They put out a statement covering both collapses.
And what do they say caused them?
Initially, explosions. They explicitly stated both incidents were caused by explosions and classified them as acts of terrorism.
Both classified as terrorism. Did they quote anyone?
Yes, their spokesperson, Svetlana Petrenko. The quote was direct. These incidents have been classified as acts of terrorism. They opened criminal cases, assigned them to their main investigative directorate. Pretty serious stuff.
Okay, so that seems definitive. Explosions, terrorism. Case closed.
Well, no. Because then came another edit.
The investigative committee edited their statement, too.
They did. Their post on Telegram about the incidents was changed. The updated version completely removed the word explosions.
Seriously? What did it say instead?
It just said the Bryansk bridge collapsed. And for the Kursk incident, it said a train fell from a damaged bridge. Just factual descriptions, no mention of blasts or bombs anymore.
Oh. So first, Moscow Railway edits out unlawful interference. Then the main investigative committee edits out explosions. And terrorism seems to be downplayed by removing the cause. That feels significant.
It's highly significant, especially in, let's say, a tightly controlled information space. To walk back an official statement from that agency after explicitly citing explosions and terrorism,
Right.
It's not a minor tweak.
What could it mean? Internal debate, uncertainty, political pressure.
Could be any of those. Maybe they weren't as sure as the initial report suggested. Maybe they wanted to wait for more evidence. Or maybe there were other reasons to soften the official language. It definitely highlights how fluid things can be, even the official narrative. We do know President Putin was kept updated throughout the night.
And emergency services were working at both sites, of course. Some injured were even flown to Moscow, I read.
Yes, the response was significant. But the strange events didn't quite end there.
There was more.
Later on Sunday, those same Telegram channels, Shot and 1 and 12, reported a third incident, again in the Bryansk region near a place called Unechka.
What happened there?
Reports claimed railroad tracks were blown up just as a track inspection train was passing over them.
Any injuries in that one?
Initial reports said no, thankfully.
Was that confirmed? The track damage.
Moscow Railway's press service did confirm it later. They found damage on the Onekazeka line during an inspection and had to suspend service temporarily. And local reports, apparently citing railway workers on the ground, also attributed that damage specifically to a planned explosion.
Okay, so even if the official line on the bridges got edited, there seems to be confirmation of track damage attributed to an explosion elsewhere in the same region, same day.
That seems to be the case, yes. It adds another layer.
And pulling back to the bigger picture, all these incidents are happening in regions right next to Ukraine, areas that have seen, shelling, drone attacks, alleged raids since the full-scale invasion started.
Exactly. That context is crucial. It inevitably leads to speculation about who might be responsible for targeting infrastructure there.
And some Russian officials didn't wait long to point fingers, did they?
No, they were quite quick. Some officials, pro-Kremlin sources, immediately blamed Ukrainian saboteurs. We saw quotes from Andrei Klishas, a senior lawmaker from the ruling party, blaming Ukraine directly for the Bryansk collapse. He even called Ukraine a terrorist enclave. Pretty strong rhetoric.
Okay, so that's the accusation from the Russian side. What about Ukraine? Did they say anything?
Ukraine's military intelligence, the GUR, they did put out a statement on Sunday. But, and this is important, it seemed to be about a different event entirely.
Different how?
They claimed a Russian military freight train carrying food and fuel had been blown up while it was on its way to Crimea. They talked about destroying Moscow's key artery for supplying occupied areas.
Right, I remember seeing that. But did they mention the Bryansk or Kursk bridge collapses at all?
Critically, no. Their statement did not claim responsibility for those specific bridge collapses. Didn't even mention them. They focused solely on that alleged military train heading towards Crimea.
So Ukraine's intelligence claims a separate military logistics hit further south, but doesn't claim the civilian passenger train derailment or the other freight train incident in Bryansk and Kursk.
Precisely. Which makes verifying exactly what happened and who might be responsible for the Bryansk and Kursk collapses specifically very difficult. You have these competing claims, different incidents reported in different locations. Independent verification is extremely challenging.
And the timing. Someone mentioned this all happened just before possible talks.
Yeah, reports suggested it was on the eve of a potential meeting between Russian and Ukrainian officials, maybe in Istanbul. Adds another layer of potential geopolitical context, though it's hard to draw firm conclusions from that alone.
Okay, let's try to pull this all together then. What are the key takeaways from the stack?
Well, the stark facts are multiple serious infrastructure incidents in Russian border regions happening very close together, and most significantly, the Bryansk Bridge collapse, which was devastatingly deadly.
And layered on top of those facts, these immediately conflicting narratives. You have initial official statements, local officials pointing straight at explosions, terrorism.
Right. But then crucially, the official investigative committee statement gets edited. The explicit mention of explosions is removed.
And meanwhile, some Russian officials are loudly blaming Ukraine, while Ukraine's intelligence talks about a completely separate incident involving a military train and doesn't claim the bridge collapses at all.
It's a messy information environment, but amidst all that, the human cost is undeniable. 7 people dead, dozens injured just in Bryansk.
Yeah, those personal stories, like the guy waiting for his father who survived. It really brings it home. It's not just abstract news.
Absolutely. And strategically, these events, regardless of the exact cause, highlight the vulnerability of Russia's domestic infrastructure near the border, hitting rail lines, bridges that can really snarl logistics.
Disrupting movement of troops, supplies, everything needed for the conflict effort. Forces rerouting, adds delays, costs.
Yeah. So this deep dive really shows us, I think, how conflict impacts areas far beyond the immediate front lines. The terrible cost to civilians, to infrastructure, and maybe most importantly, the huge challenge in getting a clear, verified picture when official stories change and different sources offer competing versions of reality.
So for you, listening to all this, trying to make sense of it, it really poses a challenge, doesn't it? When infrastructure is hit in a war zone and the information you get about why or how is controlled or debated or just plain contradictory, how do you even begin to navigate that to figure out what's really happening on the ground?
That's the core question, isn't it? Something to keep thinking about as these kinds of situations inevitably continue to unfold.